He refused to pay child support and called my daughter a gold digger's trap. Now she's the only stem cell match for his dying little brother. The phone rang at 6:47 in the morning, and Ruth Castellano's hand froze over the answer button when she saw the unknown number. Hello. There was a pause on the other end. Then a man's voice she hadn't heard in 23 years but would recognize anywhere. Ruth? It's Daniel. Her entire body went cold. Daniel. Ruth, please don't hang up. I know I have no right to call you after all these years, but I'm begging you. It's about Iris. It's life or death. Life or death. What about my daughter? Our daughter. Ruth, I need to see you. I need to ask you something. My son, Marcus, he's dying, and Iris might be his only chance at survival. Ruth's voice came out flat and hard. Your son. The child you chose to raise while you spent 23 years pretending my daughter didn't exist. That son? Yes. Ruth, I know what I did was unforgivable. I know I destroyed everything between us. But Marcus is 19 years old and he's dying, and the doctors say Iris might be able to save his life. Please. I'm begging you. Just meet with me. Let me explain. Ruth stared out at the Oakland sunrise, her chest tight with rage and disbelief. You called me a gold digger 23 years ago, Daniel. You said I got pregnant on purpose to trap you. You told me that baby wasn't yours and that I should handle it and never contact you again. And now you want my daughter's bone marrow? I know. I know. I was a coward and I've regretted it every single day since. But this isn't about me or what I deserve. It's about an innocent kid who's done nothing wrong. Please, Ruth. Just give me 10 minutes. Ruth closed her eyes and thought about the daughter sleeping inside their small apartment. The daughter she'd raised alone through poverty and struggle and sacrifice. The daughter who'd just earned her master's degree in social work despite every obstacle the world had thrown at her. 10 minutes. That's all you get. 3 days later, Ruth sat in a booth at a diner halfway between Oakland and San Francisco, watching the door with the wariness of someone who'd learned not to trust easily. When Daniel Moretti walked in, she felt like she was seeing a ghost. He'd aged. The cocky 26-year-old business student who'd walked away from her was now a man approaching 50, with gray threading through his dark hair and lines around his eyes that spoke of stress rather than laughter. He wore an expensive suit and a designer watch. The kind of success he'd been chasing when he decided a pregnant girlfriend didn't fit his trajectory. Ruth. He slid into the booth across from her, and she noticed his hands were shaking slightly. Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would. I'm here because you mentioned my daughter. Ruth's voice was steady, years of hard-won composure keeping it level. You have 10 minutes. Daniel nodded, accepting the boundary. I'll get straight to it. I'm married. Have been for 19 years. My wife Vanessa and we have a son. His name is Marcus. He's 19 years old. Ruth felt something cold settle in her stomach. A son. Daniel had raised a son while refusing to acknowledge Iris existed. Marcus has been sick for the past 4 years. It started with fatigue, unexplained bruising. We thought it was sports injuries. He played basketball. But it got worse. 3 years ago, he was diagnosed with aplastic anemia. His bone marrow doesn't produce enough blood cells. Despite herself, Ruth felt a flicker of sympathy. She'd worked in hospital settings long enough to know how serious that diagnosis was. We've tried everything. Medications, blood transfusions, immunosuppressive therapy. Nothing's worked long-term. His doctors say he needs a stem cell transplant. It's his only real chance. I'm sorry about your son. Ruth's tone was careful, measured. But I don't understand what this has to do with Iris. Daniel took a shaky breath. The doctors asked about siblings right away. Standard protocol. I told them Marcus was an only child. Daniel's face twisted with shame. I lied to them for almost 2 years, Ruth. We searched the registry, tested thousands of potential donors, found no matches. And the whole time, I knew there was a half-sibling out there. I just couldn't face telling Vanessa and Marcus the truth. It wasn't until Marcus's condition got critical last month that I finally admitted to the doctors that he has a half-sister. Ruth stared at him, the magnitude of his cowardice settling over her like a weight. You let your son suffer for 2 years because you were too ashamed to admit you'd abandoned a child. Yes. Daniel's voice broke. I did. And that's something I'll have to live with forever. But Ruth, we're out of time now. The doctors ran probability models. A half-sibling is Marcus's best chance. We need to test Iris. She might be his only hope. The audacity of it struck Ruth like a physical blow. This man had spent 23 years denying Iris's existence, calling her a gold digger's trap, refusing every form of support or acknowledgement. And now he was sitting in this diner asking for her daughter's bone marrow. You have some nerve. Ruth's composure was beginning to crack. Do you have any idea, any concept at all, of what the last 23 years have been like? Ruth, please. I was 22 years old. Ruth's voice was shaking now. Working 2 jobs while trying to finish my CNA certification when I got pregnant. I was terrified, but I was also happy because I thought we were building something. Then I told you, and you looked at me like I was garbage. Daniel's face had gone pale. I know. I was young and stupid in. You called me a gold digger. Ruth cut him off. You said I got pregnant on purpose to trap you. You said that baby wasn't yours and that I was probably sleeping with half the campus. You told me to handle it and never contact you again. I was wrong. I had Iris alone in a county hospital. Tears were streaming down Ruth's face now, years of suppressed pain breaking free. I was in labor for 19 hours with no one there except a nurse who held my hand during shift changes. I was 23 years old, and I took my baby home to a studio apartment. I had to drop out of my program because I couldn't afford childcare and classes. I never went back. Daniel was crying now too. Ruth, I'm sorry. I worked 3 jobs for 7 years. Ruth continued. I missed her first steps because I was at work. I brought her to my night shifts when I couldn't afford a sitter and prayed she wouldn't wake up crying. When Iris finally started school, I was able to consolidate to 1 job at the hospital cafeteria, but I worked every overtime shift available. I fed her and kept her clothed and made sure she had everything she needed, and I did it alone because you decided we weren't worth the inconvenience. You're right. Daniel's voice was broken. You're absolutely right. I was a coward. I let my fear and my selfishness destroy the best thing that ever happened to me. I've regretted it every day for 23 years. Ruth wiped her eyes, pulling her composure back like armor. But not enough to actually do anything about it. Not enough to send a single check or make a single call or acknowledge that you had a daughter growing up without a father. No. Daniel admitted. Not enough for that. I told myself you were fine, that you didn't need me, that it was better if I just stayed away. I built a whole life pretending Iris didn't exist because it was easier than facing what I'd done. They sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of 23 years of absence heavy between them. Outside, cars passed on the highway, life moving forward while theirs remained stuck in this impossible moment. Does Marcus know about Iris? Ruth asked finally. Daniel shook his head. Not until 2 months ago. When I finally told the doctors the truth, I had to tell Marcus and Vanessa too. Vanessa knew I'd had a relationship before her, but I'd never mentioned that I'd abandoned a child. That you'd abandoned a child. Ruth finished the sentence he couldn't. Yes. Ruth stared out the window, her mind racing. Part of her wanted to stand up, walk out, and never see Daniel Moretti again. He deserved nothing from her, nothing from Iris. Let him face the consequences of his choices. But there was another part of her, the part that had spent 23 years working in hospitals and care facilities, that understood what he was going through. A sick child was every parent's nightmare. And despite everything, Marcus was innocent in all of this. This isn't my decision to make, Ruth said finally. Iris is 23 years old. She's an adult. If you want to ask her to get tested, you'll have to ask her yourself. Daniel looked up with desperate hope. You'll let me talk to her? I'll tell her what's happening and give her your contact information, Ruth corrected. What she decides to do after that is entirely up to her. She's under no obligation, legal, moral, or otherwise, to help you or your son. Is that clear? Crystal clear, Daniel said quickly. Ruth, thank you. I know I have no right to ask this, no right to ask anything from either of you. You're right, Ruth interrupted, standing up. You don't. But Iris is a better person than either of us, and she deserves the chance to make her own choice about this. 23 years ago, Ruth Castellano had been a different person. Young, optimistic, in love with the future she thought she was building. She'd met Daniel Moretti in an economics class during her second year at community college. She was taking it as an elective while working toward her CNA certification. He was a business major with big dreams and a smile that made her believe in possibilities. They'd dated for 8 months. Not long in the grand scheme of things, but long enough for Ruth to think she knew him. Long enough to fall in love. Long enough to imagine a future together. When the pregnancy test showed 2 pink lines, Ruth's first emotion had been fear. She was 22, working 2 jobs to pay for school, living in a studio apartment she could barely afford. A baby wasn't part of the plan. But her second emotion had been joy. Because she loved Daniel, and she thought he loved her, and maybe this wasn't the timeline they'd imagined, but they could make it work. They could build something good together. She told him on a Tuesday evening in his apartment. She remembered every detail. The Chinese takeout containers on his coffee table. The basketball game playing on mute in the background. The way his face had changed when she said the words. I'm pregnant. The silence that followed had been deafening. Then Daniel had stood up, paced to the window, and said the words that would echo in Ruth's mind for the next 23 years. You did this on purpose, didn't you? Got yourself pregnant to trap me. I should have known better. Girls like you always pull this gold digger crap. Ruth had felt the world tilt beneath her feet. What? Daniel, no. I didn't. We were careful, but sometimes these things happen. Are you even sure it's mine? Daniel had turned on her, his face cold and calculating in a way she'd never seen before. How do I know you haven't been sleeping with other guys? How do I know this isn't some scam to get child support from me? The cruelty of it had stolen Ruth's breath. I haven't been with anyone else. How could you even think that? Daniel, I love you. We can figure this out together. There's nothing to figure out. Daniel's voice had been flat, final. This is your problem, Ruth. You handle it. Get an abortion, put it up for adoption, I don't care. But don't expect anything from me. Don't call me, don't contact me, don't try to put my name on any birth certificate. As far as I'm concerned, this conversation never happened. Ruth had left his apartment that night feeling like her entire world had shattered. The man she'd loved, the man she'd trusted, had revealed himself to be someone she didn't recognize at all. She'd considered his suggestions. Abortion. Adoption. Walking away from the tiny cluster of cells growing inside her and pretending none of this had ever happened. But every time she thought about it, something in her chest tightened with a fierceness she hadn't known she possessed. This baby, wanted or not, planned or not, was hers. And she would protect it with everything she had. Ruth had called Daniel 3 more times over the next month. Left messages asking him to reconsider, to at least talk about child support, to acknowledge that this baby existed. He never called back. The 4th time she called, his number had been disconnected. She'd given birth to Iris on a freezing February morning in a county hospital. 19 hours of labor with only the nurses for company. No partner holding her hand. No family in the waiting room. Just Ruth, 23 years old, bringing a tiny human into the world through sheer force of will. When they'd placed Iris in her arms, red-faced and screaming and absolutely perfect, Ruth had made a promise. "You will have everything I can give you. I will work as hard as I need to work. I will sacrifice whatever I need to sacrifice. You will know you are loved every single day of your life." And she had kept that promise. Ruth had dropped out of her CNA program 2 weeks after Iris was born. The math was simple and brutal. She couldn't afford childcare and tuition. She could barely afford rent and food. Something had to go, and her education was the only flexible variable in the equation. She'd gotten a job at a 24-hour grocery store, working the night shift when a neighbor, Mrs. Chen, could watch baby Iris for a few dollars. She'd taken a second job cleaning office buildings in the early mornings. A third job waitressing on weekends. For 7 years, Ruth had lived in a constant state of exhaustion. She'd missed Iris's first steps because she'd been stocking shelves at the grocery store. She'd missed her first words because she'd been scrubbing toilets in an office building. She brought toddler Iris to community college classes when she tried to go back to school part-time, praying her daughter would stay quiet in the back row. It hadn't worked. Iris had cried during a statistics lecture, and the professor had asked Ruth not to bring her back. Ruth had withdrawn from the class and shelved her education dreams indefinitely. When Iris started elementary school, Ruth had finally been able to consolidate to one full-time position at the hospital cafeteria. It didn't pay much, but it was stable, and she worked every overtime shift she could get. Holidays, weekends, double shifts. Whatever it took to keep their small apartment and put food on the table. Through it all, through the poverty and the struggle and the bone-deep exhaustion, Ruth had kept her promise. Iris had always known she was loved. Always known she was wanted. Always known that her mother would move heaven and earth to give her the best life possible. There had been hard moments. The father-daughter dances at school that Iris had pretended not to care about but Ruth knew hurt her deeply. The emergency contact forms that only ever listed Ruth's name. The birthday parties where other kids had 2 parents and Iris had 1. When Iris was 8, she'd come home from school with tears in her eyes. "Why don't I have a daddy? All the other kids have daddies. Did I do something wrong?" Ruth's heart had broken into a million pieces. "No, baby. You didn't do anything wrong. You were perfect. Your daddy, he wasn't ready to be a parent. But that's about him, not about you. You understand me? You are loved and wanted and perfect exactly as you are. But why did he leave?" Ruth had struggled for an answer that was honest but not cruel. Sometimes grown-ups make choices that hurt people. Your daddy made a choice to not be part of our lives. That was his choice, and it was the wrong choice. But you and me, we're going to be okay. We're going to be more than okay. And they had been. Through sheer determination and sacrifice, Ruth had made sure of it. When Iris turned 13 and started asking harder questions, Ruth had told her more of the truth. That her father had denied paternity. That he'd refused to help financially. That he'd cut off all contact before Iris was even born. She'd expected anger. What she got was a quiet sadness that was somehow worse. "Do you think he ever thinks about me?" Iris had asked. Ruth had chosen honesty. "I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe. But if he does, he's never acted on it. Would you let him back in? If he wanted to meet me?" Ruth had thought about it carefully. "That would be your decision to make. If you wanted to meet him when you're older, I wouldn't stop you. But I also wouldn't force it. Your heart gets to decide. I don't think I want to meet someone who didn't want me." "You don't have to." Ruth had pulled her daughter close. "You never have to make room in your life for people who don't deserve to be there." Through high school, Iris had bloomed into someone remarkable. Compassionate, driven, fiercely intelligent. She'd earned scholarships, worked part-time jobs, taken out student loans, and pushed herself through an accelerated combined bachelor's and master's program in social work. 5 years instead of the typical 6, graduating at 23 with both degrees and a determination to help families in crisis. Ruth had watched with pride as her daughter became the kind of person who chose social work as a career, who wanted to help families in crisis, who believed in the power of showing up for people who needed someone in their corner. Everything good in Iris had come from Ruth showing up, day after day, year after year, choice after choice. And now Daniel Moretti wanted something from that goodness. From the daughter he'd called a gold digger's trap before she was even born. That evening, Ruth sat Iris down in their small living room and told her everything. About Daniel's call, about Marcus, about the stem cell transplant need, about how Daniel had lied to doctors for 2 years rather than admit he had another child. She watched her daughter's face cycle through shock, confusion, hurt, and finally, something that looked like sad resignation. "I have a brother," Iris said quietly when Ruth finished. "A brother who's dying." "A half-brother," Ruth corrected gently. "And yes, apparently he's very sick. But Iris, I need you to understand something. You don't owe these people anything. Not testing, not donation, not even a conversation. Daniel Moretti abandoned us. He called you a gold digger's trap before you were even born." Iris was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. She'd inherited her father's dark hair but had Ruth's warm brown eyes and stubborn chin. "What was he like?" Iris asked finally. "Before everything went wrong?" Ruth sighed, allowing herself to remember. "Smart. Ambitious. Funny when he wanted to be. We met in an economics class. I was taking it as an elective, and he was majoring in business. He was charming, and I was young enough to mistake charm for character. Do you think he's changed?" "I don't know," Ruth answered honestly. "People can change, but that doesn't erase what they did. He seemed genuinely remorseful today, but remorse is easy when you need something." Iris nodded slowly. "I want to meet him. And Marcus." "Iris. Not because I owe them anything," Iris interrupted gently. "But because I need to understand this for myself. All my life, I've had this father-shaped hole in my story. Every school form asking for emergency contacts, every father-daughter dance I pretended not to care about, every time someone asked why I didn't have a dad and I had to explain that I did, he just didn't want me." Ruth's heart broke all over again. "Baby, I'm so sorry." "Mom, no," Iris said firmly, taking Ruth's hand. "You have nothing to be sorry for. You've been everything. Mother, father, cheerleader, provider, protector. You're the strongest person I know. But this Daniel thing, this half-brother thing, I need to see it for myself. I need to make my own choice about what happens next." Ruth studied her daughter's face, seeing the determination there, the compassion that had led Iris to social work, the strength that came from being raised by a single mother who'd shown her that hardship didn't have to break you. "Okay," Ruth said finally. "But I'm coming with you." "I was hoping you'd say that." They met at a coffee shop in San Francisco 3 days later. Daniel arrived with his wife Vanessa, a petite woman with auburn hair and eyes that were red from crying, and Marcus. Ruth felt her breath catch when she saw the young man in the wheelchair. Marcus Moretti was 19 but looked younger, his face gaunt and pale, dark circles under eyes that still held a spark of life. He wore a medical mask, and even from across the coffee shop, Ruth could see the exhaustion in the way he held himself. Iris went very still beside her. "Oh," she whispered. "He looks like the photos of me when I was little. Same nose, same chin." She was right. Despite Marcus being 19 and Iris 23, despite different mothers and different lives, the family resemblance was unmistakable. They were siblings, connected by DNA if nothing else. Daniel stood as they approached, and Ruth noticed he looked 10 years older than he had 3 days ago. "Ruth. Iris. Thank you for coming. This is my wife, Vanessa, and our son, Marcus." There was an awkward moment where no one knew quite what to say. Then Marcus pulled down his medical mask and gave Iris a small, tired smile. "Hi. I guess you're my sister." "I guess I am," Iris replied, her voice gentle. She pulled out a chair and sat directly across from Marcus, studying his face with the open curiosity of someone meeting a stranger who was somehow family. "How are you feeling?" Marcus shrugged, a gesture that looked painful. "I've had better weeks. Better years, actually. But I'm still here, so that's something." "Marcus has good days and bad days," Vanessa said, her hand protectively on her son's shoulder. Her eyes when she looked at Iris were complicated, gratitude mixed with something that might have been resentment or fear. "Today is actually one of his better days. Last week he was in the hospital for another transfusion." Ruth watched the interaction with the trained eye of someone who'd spent decades in healthcare settings. Marcus was clearly very ill. The pallor, the fatigue, the medical mask to protect his compromised immune system. This wasn't a manipulation or exaggeration. This young man was genuinely fighting for his life. "The doctors have explained what they're looking for?" Daniel asked Iris, his voice hesitant. "With the stem cell match?" "I did my own research," Iris replied. "Siblings have about a 25% chance of being compatible matches. Half-siblings, the odds are lower but still possible. They'd need to test my HLA markers, human leukocyte antigens, to see if they match Marcus's." "You've really done your homework," Marcus said with a ghost of a smile. "Are you in medicine?" "Social work," Iris said. "But I wanted to understand what we were talking about before I came here." "And what are we talking about?" Vanessa asked, her voice tight. "I'm sorry, but I need to know. Are you willing to be tested? Because Marcus doesn't have unlimited time. Every week that passes, he gets weaker." Ruth felt her protective instincts flare. "Iris doesn't have to decide anything right now." "It's okay, Mom," Iris interrupted gently. She turned to Vanessa with a directness that made Ruth proud. "I understand your son is sick. I understand you're scared. But I need you to understand something too. I'm not here because I owe anyone anything. I'm here because I wanted to meet my half-brother and make an informed decision about whether I'm willing to help him." Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry. I know this whole situation is impossible. When Daniel told me about you 2 months ago, I was shocked and angry. Angry that he'd hidden it, angry that we needed something from the child he'd abandoned. But then I thought about Marcus, about losing him, and I didn't care about anything except saving my son." "I get that," Iris said quietly. "If I were in your position, I'd probably feel the same way. But you need to understand that this is a big decision for me. Getting tested is one thing. If I'm a match, actually going through with the donation is something else entirely. The process is fairly straightforward," Marcus offered, his voice weak but steady. "They'd take your blood, test the HLA markers. If you're a compatible match, the actual donation involves collecting stem cells from your bloodstream through a process called apheresis. It's not surgery. They give you medication for a few days to increase stem cell production, then collect them through and for. It takes a few hours, and you might feel tired or achy afterward, but there are no long-term health risks." "You've really studied this," Iris observed. "When your life depends on finding a donor, you become an expert pretty quickly," Marcus replied. "I've also learned a lot about half-siblings in the last few weeks. Dad and I have had some very interesting conversations." The emphasis on the word dad wasn't lost on anyone. Daniel flinched visibly. "I'm sure you have questions," Daniel said to Iris, his voice rough. "About me, about why I wasn't there. You deserve answers." Iris looked at him for a long moment, and Ruth could see the war of emotions on her daughter's face. The child who'd grown up without a father, the young woman trying to reconcile the man in front of her with the absence that had shaped her life. "I used to have a lot of questions," Iris said finally. "When I was little, I'd make up stories about why you weren't around. Mom never spoke badly about you. She just said things were complicated. But I knew. Kids always know when they're not wanted." Daniel's composure cracked. "Iris, I'm not done." Iris said quietly but firmly. As I got older, I stopped making up stories and started facing reality. You knew I existed and chose not to be part of my life. That was your decision, and I've made peace with it. I had an incredible mother who was worth 10 absent fathers. Ruth felt tears slide down her cheeks. But now you're here. Iris continued. Asking me to help save the child you chose to raise. The brother I never knew existed. And I'm trying to figure out how I feel about that. You should feel angry. Marcus said suddenly, his voice stronger than it had been. Everyone turned to look at him. You should feel angry and resentful and like telling all of us to go to hell. That's what I'd feel if I were in your position. Marcus, Vanessa started. Mom, no. Marcus interrupted. We need to be honest here. What Dad did to Iris and her mom was terrible. Abandoning your own child, refusing to help raise her, calling her mother names, it's inexcusable. The fact that I'm sick doesn't change that or make it magically okay. He turned to Iris, his eyes direct despite his obvious exhaustion. I didn't know about you until 2 months ago. When Dad finally told me the truth, I was shocked and angry and confused. I kept thinking about how I had a sister all this time and never knew it. How you grew up alone while I had everything. 2 parents, a nice house, college fund, the works. It's not your fault. Iris said gently. I know. Marcus replied. But that doesn't make it fair. And now here I am, dying, and your potential stem cells might be my only chance at survival. Which puts you in an impossible position. Help the brother you never knew existed and indirectly let our father off the hook for abandoning you, or refuse and live with the knowledge that you could have saved someone's life. The brutal honesty silenced the entire table. Ruth found herself reassessing this young man who, despite his illness and fear, was able to articulate the moral complexity of the situation. You're very perceptive. Iris said quietly. I've had a lot of time to think. Marcus replied. When you're sick like this, you have nothing but time. And I've thought a lot about you, about the sister I never knew. About what your life must have been like while mine was comfortable. It's not fair that I'm asking you for help when you've already been hurt so much by our father. But you're asking anyway. Iris observed. Not accusatory, just factual. Yes. Marcus said. Because I'm 19 years old, and I don't want to die. Because I want to finish college and travel and fall in love and do all the things I've been planning. Because I'm scared, and you're my best chance at survival. So yes, I'm asking. But I also want you to know that I understand if you say no. Iris was quiet for a long moment, staring at this young man who was connected to her by biology but separated by completely different life experiences. Ruth could see her daughter processing, weighing, trying to navigate the impossible moral terrain. I'll get tested. Iris said finally. Vanessa let out a sob of relief. Daniel's eyes closed as if in prayer. But, Iris continued firmly. I'm not making any promises beyond that. If I'm a match, I'll need time to think about whether I'm willing to go through with the donation. And I need everyone here to understand that this decision is mine alone. No pressure, no guilt trips, no manipulation. Understood? Understood. Marcus said immediately. And Iris? Thank you. Just for being willing to test. That's more than we had any right to ask. Outside the coffee shop, after Daniel and his family had left, Ruth and Iris stood on the sidewalk in the cooling San Francisco evening. The fog was rolling in from the bay, wrapping the city in gray. You okay? Ruth asked. Iris shook her head. I don't know. I just met my dying half-brother and the father who abandoned me, and I agreed to potentially give part of my body to save a stranger's life. I have no idea if I'm okay. You don't have to go through with any of this. Ruth reminded her. You agreed to testing, not donation. You can walk away at any point. I know. Iris said. But when I looked at Marcus, when I saw how sick he is, I felt something I didn't expect. What? Connection. Not because of Daniel or biology, but because he's a person in pain, and I might have the ability to help. That's why I went into social work, Mom. Because I believe in helping people who are suffering. Even when those people are connected to the man who hurt you. Iris turned to face her mother. Marcus didn't hurt me. Daniel did. And I can help Marcus while still holding Daniel accountable for what he did to us. Those are separate things, right? Ruth pulled her daughter into a hug. Yes, sweetheart. Those are very separate things. The testing was done at UCSF Medical Center, where Marcus was being treated. Iris went alone, refusing Ruth's offer to accompany her. I need to do this part myself, Mom. Iris had said. To prove to myself that I'm making this choice independently. Ruth had understood, even as it killed her not to be there holding her daughter's hand. 3 days later, the results came back. Ruth was working her shift at the hospital cafeteria when Iris called. The moment Ruth saw her daughter's name on the caller ID, her heart started racing. Mom. Iris's voice was shaking. I'm a match. Not just compatible. I'm a nearly perfect match. The doctor said it's remarkable given that we're only half siblings. Ruth sat down heavily on a storage crate in the back room, one hand pressed against her chest. Oh, honey. They want to schedule the donation as soon as possible. Iris continued. Marcus's condition is deteriorating. They're saying if we're going to do this, it needs to be within the next month. What did you tell them? That I needed time to think. Iris's voice broke. Mom, I don't know what to do. Come home. Ruth said immediately. We'll talk this through together. That evening, they sat in their familiar positions. Ruth on the worn couch that had been in the apartment since Iris was a baby, Iris curled in the armchair that had been her reading spot since childhood. Between them was tea that neither of them drank as they navigated the most difficult decision of Iris's young life. Tell me what you're feeling. Ruth said gently. Iris was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. I keep thinking about Marcus's face when I agreed to get tested. The hope in it. He's 19, Mom. Just 19. A kid who's done nothing wrong except have a father who made terrible choices before he was even born. But those terrible choices hurt you. Ruth reminded her gently. You're allowed to factor that into your decision. I know. Iris said. And part of me wants to say no just to make Daniel suffer the way we suffered. To make him understand what it feels like to lose something important because of someone else's choice. That would be understandable. But it wouldn't actually hurt Daniel. Iris continued. Not really. It would hurt Marcus. An innocent person who's already suffering. And that doesn't feel like justice. It feels like cruelty. Ruth studied her daughter's face, seeing the struggle there, the compassion warring with hurt, the moral clarity trying to cut through complicated emotions. What does your heart tell you? Ruth asked. That I want to help him. Iris admitted. When I met Marcus, when I saw how sick he is, I felt this connection. Not because of Daniel or biology, but because he's a person in pain, and I have the ability to help. That's why I went into social work. Because I believe in helping people who are suffering. Helping people is your calling. Ruth agreed. But Iris, this is different than your work. This is personal. This involves the man who abandoned you. I know. Iris said. That's what makes it so complicated. If Marcus were a stranger on the registry, I wouldn't hesitate. But he's not a stranger. He's my father's son. The child Daniel chose to raise while refusing to acknowledge I existed. Are you worried that helping Marcus means forgiving Daniel? Ruth asked. Iris looked up, surprised by the question. Maybe. I don't know. Does it? Only if you decide it does. Ruth said. Iris, you can help Marcus and still hold Daniel accountable for abandoning you. Those are separate things. Donating stem cells doesn't erase 23 years of absence. It doesn't make what he did okay. Then why does it feel like I'm letting him off the hook? Ruth moved to sit beside her daughter, pulling her close the way she had when Iris was small and the world felt too big. Because you have a good heart, and good hearts sometimes struggle with boundaries. But listen to me. Saving Marcus's life would be an act of compassion toward Marcus, not toward Daniel. If you choose to do this, you do it because you value human life, because you couldn't live with yourself knowing you had the power to help and didn't. Not because you owe Daniel anything. What would you do? Iris asked. If you were in my position? Ruth considered the question carefully. Honestly? I don't know. Part of me wants you to refuse, to protect yourself from being hurt by these people who don't deserve your kindness. But another part of me knows that you're not me. You didn't go through what I went through with Daniel. Your hurt is different, and your choice should be based on your own values, not my pain. Your pain matters too, Mom. Yes. Ruth agreed. But this decision is yours to make. I'll support you either way. If you choose to donate or if you choose to walk away. All I want is for you to make the choice that lets you sleep at night. Iris was quiet for a long time, processing everything. The silence in their small apartment was comfortable, familiar, the kind of quiet that came from 23 years of being each other's primary person. Finally, Iris spoke. I want to talk to Marcus again. Alone, without Daniel or Vanessa. I need to understand who he is beyond this crisis. Okay. Ruth said. I think that's smart. 2 days later, they met at a park near the hospital. Marcus sat in his wheelchair, and Iris pushed him along the path while Ruth waited at a bench nearby. Close enough for support, far enough for privacy. Thanks for meeting me, Iris said as they found a quiet spot overlooking a small pond. Ducks glided across the water, oblivious to the weight of the conversation about to happen. I needed to talk without everyone else's emotions in the room. I get that, Marcus said. My parents have been hovering since the diagnosis. I love them, but sometimes I feel like I'm drowning in their fear. Tell me about yourself, Iris said, settling onto a bench beside his wheelchair. Not the sick version. The real you. Who's Marcus Moretti when he's not fighting for his life? Marcus smiled, a real smile that transformed his gaunt face and gave Iris a glimpse of who he'd been before illness had taken over his life. I just started at Berkeley before I had to take medical leave. I'm studying environmental science. I want to work on climate solutions, sustainable technology, that kind of thing. That's impressive. I'm probably too idealistic, Marcus admitted. Dad wants me to go into business like him, but I can't get excited about profit margins when the planet is burning. We fight about it a lot. Or we did, before I got too sick to fight about anything. What else? Iris asked. What do you do for fun? I used to play basketball. Made varsity my freshman year of high school. I'm decent at guitar, though I haven't had the energy to play in months. I like old movies, especially film noir. And I'm embarrassingly invested in fantasy football despite being terrible at it. Iris laughed, and the sound seemed to surprise both of them. I'm terrible at anything sports-related too. Mom used to take me to games when I was little because she thought I should have diverse experiences, and I'd just bring a book and read in the bleachers. What kind of books? Everything. Fiction, biographies, social theory. I was that kid who got excited about library day. They talked for an hour, discovering small connections and differences. Marcus's childhood had been materially comfortable but emotionally complicated. Daniel was a workaholic who showed love through money rather than time. Iris's childhood had been materially sparse but emotionally rich. Ruth had worked constantly but was present in the ways that mattered. Finally, Marcus broached the subject they'd been avoiding. Can I ask you something personal? Sure. Do you hate him? Our dad? Iris considered the question carefully, watching the ducks paddle in lazy circles on the pond. I used to think I did. When I was younger, I'd imagine him out there living his life while Mom and I struggled, and I'd feel this rage. But as I got older, the rage turned into something else. Not quite hate, More like sad acceptance. He's a stranger who shares my DNA. I don't know him well enough to hate him. That's fair. Marcus said quietly. I know him, and sometimes I'm not sure I like him very much. He's not a bad person. He provides well, he's never been abusive, he loves Mom and me. But there's this coldness to him, this emotional distance. Like he's afraid of actually feeling things. Maybe that's why he ran when my mom got pregnant. Iris mused. Becoming a father required feeling something he wasn't ready for. Probably. Marcus agreed. Though that doesn't make what he did okay. No. Iris said. It doesn't. They sat in silence for a moment, watching the ducks, listening to children playing on a nearby playground. Life continuing around them in all its messy, complicated beauty. I'm going to ask you something. Iris said finally. And I want you to be completely honest. No politeness, no trying to make me feel better. Just truth. Okay. If I weren't a match, if I couldn't help you, would you want any kind of relationship with me? Marcus was quiet, really thinking about the question. Iris appreciated that he didn't rush to answer, didn't offer easy reassurances that might not be true. Before I got sick, probably not. He said finally. I would have been too angry at Dad for lying, too uncomfortable with the complication. But these last few months have changed how I see things. When you're facing mortality at 19, you start thinking about what actually matters. And family, real family, not just the Norman Rockwell version, starts to matter more. He turned his wheelchair to face her directly, his eyes serious and clear. So yes. Even if you weren't a match, I'd want to know you. Because you're my sister, and I've already missed 23 years of having you in my life. I don't want to miss more. Iris felt tears prick her eyes. Okay. Okay, you believe me? Or okay, something else? Okay, I'll do it. Iris said, the words coming out with more certainty than she'd expected. I'll donate the stem cells. Marcus's face went through several emotions at once. Relief, gratitude, guilt, hope. Iris, are you sure? I meant what I said. I'd want a relationship regardless. I know. Iris interrupted. I believe you. But that's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because you're 19 and you deserve a future. Because I went into social work to help people, and you're a person who needs help. Because I couldn't live with myself knowing I had the power to save your life and chose not to use it. Even though Dad doesn't deserve your compassion. This isn't about Dad. Iris said firmly. This is about you and me and the choice I can make right now. Daniel Moretti will have to live with his own choices and consequences. But your death won't be one of them if I can help it. Marcus pulled her into an awkward hug from his wheelchair, both of them crying now. The emotional weight of the decision, the impossible circumstances that had brought them together, the hope that maybe something good could come from all this pain. Thank you. He whispered. Thank you, sister. The donation was scheduled for 3 weeks later, giving Iris time to complete the preparation process. She received daily injections of filgrastim to increase her stem cell production, which left her feeling achy and tired but was otherwise manageable. Ruth took time off work to be with her daughter through the process. Every evening, she'd come home to find Iris on the couch with a heating pad, exhausted from the medication's side effects but determined to see it through. You don't have to do this. Ruth would remind her gently. You can still change your mind. I know. Iris would reply. But I'm not going to. On the 5th day of injections, to Ruth's surprise, Vanessa called. Ruth, I know this might be awkward, but I was wondering if we could meet for coffee. Just the two of us. Ruth had hesitated, then agreed. 2 days later, she found herself sitting across from Marcus's mother in a quiet cafe, two women connected by the most complicated of circumstances. Vanessa looked exhausted. The kind of bone-deep tiredness that came from months of crisis and fear. Thank you for agreeing to meet me. Vanessa said, stirring sugar into her coffee with hands that trembled slightly. I know this situation is impossibly awkward. That's one way to put it. Ruth replied, not unkindly. I wanted to apologize. Vanessa said. For how I was when we first met. Demanding, entitled. You had every right to tell us all to go to hell. Iris made her own choice. A choice she shouldn't have had to make. Vanessa said, her voice breaking slightly. Marcus is right. What Daniel did to you and Iris is inexcusable. I've been married to him for 19 years, and I thought I knew him. Finding out 2 months ago that he'd hidden a child all this time, that he'd abandoned a baby and called you terrible names, it's changed how I see everything. Ruth studied Vanessa's face, seeing genuine pain there alongside the exhaustion. How are you handling it? Ruth asked carefully. Honestly? I don't know. Vanessa admitted. Right now, every ounce of my energy is focused on Marcus surviving. But at night, when I can't sleep, I lie there thinking about what kind of man I married. What kind of man abandons his own child and then lives with that secret for over 2 decades? What kind of man lets his sick son suffer for 2 extra years because he's too ashamed to admit the truth? A coward. Ruth said simply. Someone who prioritizes comfort over doing what's right. Yes. Vanessa agreed, her eyes filling with tears. And I chose him. Built a life with him. Raised a son with his values. It makes me question everything about my own judgment. They sat in silence for a moment, 2 women on different sides of the same painful story. Outside, San Francisco moved past the cafe windows, people hurrying to appointments and meetings, lives untouched by the moral complexity happening over coffee. Can I ask you something? Vanessa said finally. Sure. How did you do it? Raise a daughter alone, build a life, stay strong through all of it? Ruth smiled sadly. I didn't have a choice. When you're a single mother, strength isn't optional. It's survival. Every morning I woke up and decided that Iris would have the best life I could give her, even if it wasn't the easiest one. Every job I worked, every sacrifice I made, it was all for her. She turned out remarkable. Vanessa said quietly. You should be incredibly proud. I am. Ruth said. Iris is everything good I tried to be and more. She has compassion I had to learn, strength that came naturally, and a moral clarity that I envy. Marcus has been different since meeting her. Vanessa offered. More thoughtful, more questioning. I think having a sibling who didn't grow up with privilege has made him think about his own advantages differently. He keeps asking me questions about what Iris's childhood must have been like. About what it means to really struggle. Maybe something good can come from this mess after all. Ruth said. Vanessa reached across the table, not quite touching Ruth's hand but close. I want you to know something. After this is over, after Marcus is hopefully healthy and recovering, Daniel and I are going to have some very serious conversations about our marriage. About honesty and character and what kind of example we've set for our son. I can't promise what will happen, but I can promise that the lie he's been living won't continue unchallenged. Ruth felt a complicated mix of emotions. Not quite satisfaction, but something close to validation that Daniel would face consequences beyond guilt. That's between you and him. Ruth said. My concern is Iris and how all of this affects her. Everything else is your family's business to sort out. Fair enough. Vanessa said quietly. The day of the donation, Ruth sat in the hospital waiting room at UCSF Medical Center while Iris underwent the apheresis procedure. Daniel and Vanessa were there too, maintaining a respectful distance but clearly anxious. The waiting room smelled like antiseptic and recycled air. The clock on the wall ticked forward with agonizing slowness. Ruth watched Daniel out of the corner of her eye. He sat rigidly in his chair, his expensive suit looking out of place in the clinical setting, his hands clenched together so tightly his knuckles had gone white. Vanessa sat 2 chairs away from him, the physical distance between them speaking volumes about the state of their marriage. After 4 hours, the doctor emerged, still in his white coat, a tired but satisfied expression on his face. Everything went well, he announced. We collected enough stem cells for the transplant, and Iris is recovering comfortably. She's asking for you, Ruth. Ruth followed the nurse back to the recovery room, her heart pounding with relief and residual anxiety. Iris looked pale and tired, and force still in her arm, but she smiled when Ruth entered. Hey, Mom. Hey, baby. How are you feeling? Like I just gave away part of my blood for several hours. Iris said with a weak laugh. But okay. The doctor said everything went smoothly. I'm so proud of you. Ruth said, taking Iris's hand carefully, avoiding the foreline. What you did today, that took real courage. Or real stupidity. Iris joked. I haven't decided which yet. Courage. Ruth said firmly. Definitely courage. A soft knock on the door interrupted them. Daniel stood in the doorway, looking uncertain, older than his 49 years, diminished somehow by the weight of everything that had brought them to this moment. May I come in? Ruth looked at Iris, who nodded. For a minute. Daniel approached the bed like he was entering sacred space, his eyes on Iris's face with an expression of such raw emotion that Ruth almost felt sorry for him. Almost. I don't have words. Daniel said, his voice thick. Thank you doesn't begin to cover what you've done for Marcus, for our family. You saved my son's life today. I hope so. Iris said quietly. The transplant still has to take, and there's recovery time. Nothing's guaranteed. But you gave him a chance he didn't have before. Daniel insisted. You gave us hope. After everything I've done, everything I failed to do, you still chose compassion. I don't deserve it. No. Iris agreed, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. You don't. The blunt honesty made Daniel flinch, but he nodded. You're right. I don't deserve your compassion or your help. I was a coward 23 years ago, and I've been living with that cowardice ever since. I told myself I was protecting my new family, that bringing up the past would only cause pain. But really, I was just protecting myself from facing what I'd done. Why are you telling me this now? Iris asked. Because you deserve the truth. Daniel said. Because you just saved my son's life, and the least I can do is be honest about why I wasn't there for you. When your mother told me she was pregnant, I panicked. I was 26, focused on building my career, terrified of responsibility. Instead of stepping up, I convinced myself she was trying to trap me. I said terrible things, things I knew weren't true, because it was easier than admitting I was scared. He paused, tears streaming down his face now. I've regretted it every single day since. When Marcus was born, when he took his first steps, when he started school, every milestone, I thought about you. About the daughter I'd abandoned who was hitting those same milestones without me. I told myself I'd reach out someday, make it right, but I never found the courage. And then when Marcus got sick and needed a donor, I still couldn't face the truth. I let him suffer for 2 extra years because I was too much of a coward to admit what I'd done. Until you needed something from me. Iris observed. Yes. Daniel admitted. Which makes me even more of a coward. I'm sorry, Iris. I'm sorry I wasn't the father you deserved. I'm sorry I let fear and selfishness destroy what could have been. I'm sorry you had to grow up without me. Iris was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was steady but sad. I appreciate the apology. I do. But it doesn't change anything. You weren't there for my first steps or my first day of school or when I learned to read or when I had nightmares. You weren't there for any of it. Mom was, always, but you weren't. I know. I donated stem cells today because Marcus deserves to live. Iris continued. Not because I've forgiven you or because we're suddenly going to be a happy family. I did it because it was the right thing to do for an innocent person who's suffering. That's it. I understand. Daniel said quietly. And I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I see you, finally. I see the remarkable woman you've become despite my absence. Your mother raised you to be strong and compassionate and principled. Everything I wasn't when it mattered. He turned to Ruth, who'd been watching this exchange in silence. Ruth, I owe you an apology too. What I said to you 23 years ago was cruel and baseless. You were an amazing woman who deserved so much better than how I treated you. You've raised an extraordinary daughter, built a good life, stayed strong through everything. You're a better person than I'll ever be. Ruth met his eyes, seeing the genuine remorse there but feeling no obligation to absolve him of anything. You're right. I did deserve better. So did Iris. We both deserved a partner and a father who showed up, who fought for us, who chose us over his own fear. But we didn't get that. We got abandonment and struggle and having to be strong because we had no other choice. I know. Daniel said. And I'll live with that for the rest of my life. Good. Ruth said simply. You should. Marcus's transplant took place 2 days later. The actual procedure was relatively quick. The stem cells Iris had donated were infused into Marcus's bloodstream through and for, where they would hopefully travel to his bone marrow and begin producing healthy blood cells. The real challenge was the recovery. Marcus was placed in isolation to protect his compromised immune system while they waited to see if the transplant would engraft, if Iris's stem cells would successfully begin producing new blood cells in his body. Iris visited him through the glass partition of his isolation room, both of them wearing masks, talking through an intercom. The sterile medical environment felt surreal, like they were astronauts communicating across the vacuum of space. How are you feeling? Iris asked. Like I have someone else's blood trying to take over my body. Marcus joked weakly. Which, I guess, is kind of what's happening. The doctors say the next few weeks will tell us if your cells are going to accept their new home or reject it. I'm rooting for acceptance. Iris said. Me too. Marcus agreed. Iris, I've been thinking a lot while lying here. About what you said, about doing this for me and not for Dad. I want you to know that I get it. And I don't expect you to suddenly be part of our family just because you saved my life. What if I want to be part of your life? Iris asked. Not the family Dad created, but maybe something new. A relationship between siblings who are getting to know each other. Marcus's eyes brightened behind his mask. I'd really like that. Me too. Iris said. You're a good person, Marcus. You didn't ask to be born into this complicated situation any more than I did. But maybe we can build something good out of it anyway. Like what? Like being siblings who actually know each other. Iris said. Who have coffee and complain about our jobs and recommend books to each other. Normal sibling stuff, on our own terms. I'd like that very much. Marcus said. Though I should warn you, I'm probably going to be really annoying when I'm healthy. I have years of missed basketball games and guitar playing to make up for. Iris laughed, the sound slightly distorted through the intercom. I'll take annoying and healthy over the alternative. For weeks after the transplant, the doctors confirmed that the engraftment was successful. Iris's stem cells had begun producing healthy blood cells in Marcus's bone marrow. He wasn't out of the woods yet. There was still risk of infection, graft versus host disease, and other complications. But the transplant had taken. He had a real chance at survival. Vanessa called Ruth with the news, both women crying with relief over the phone. Thank you. Vanessa said, her voice thick with emotion. Thank you for raising a daughter who chose compassion even when she had every reason to choose otherwise. Iris made her own choice. Ruth replied. But you're welcome. Ruth, can I ask you something? Sure. How do you think we should handle this going forward? The relationship between our families, I mean. Marcus wants to stay in touch with Iris, and she seems open to it. But the parents were the complication. Ruth thought about it carefully. I think the kids should decide what kind of relationship they want to have. Iris is an adult, Marcus is becoming one. They can navigate their sibling relationship without us interfering. As for Daniel and me, I have no interest in family dinners or pretending we're all one big happy family. That's fair. Vanessa said. What about Daniel and Iris? Also up to Iris. Ruth said. If she wants a relationship with her father, I'll support her. If she doesn't, I'll support that too. My job is to protect her, not to manage Daniel's guilt. You're very wise. Vanessa said quietly. No. Ruth corrected. Just very tired. I've spent 23 years being both mother and father to my daughter. I don't have energy left for managing other people's emotions. 6 months after the transplant, Marcus was in remission. His blood counts were stable, his energy was returning, and his doctors were cautiously optimistic about his long-term prognosis. To celebrate, he invited Iris to his favorite restaurant, a small Italian place near Berkeley's campus where he'd gone before getting sick. Ruth dropped Iris off, watching her daughter walk into the restaurant with the confidence of someone who'd made peace with a complicated situation. How's she doing? A voice asked. Ruth turned to find Vanessa sitting on a bench nearby, wrapped in a cardigan against the San Francisco evening chill. Sorry. Vanessa said. I wanted to see how Marcus looked when he walked in. I still can't quite believe he's healthy enough to be out in public. Me neither. Ruth admitted, sitting down beside her. 6 months ago, we were preparing for the possibility that this wouldn't work. But it did. Vanessa said. Because your daughter chose mercy over resentment. They sat in silence for a moment, two mothers watching their children begin a relationship that neither of them could have predicted. Through the restaurant window, they could see Iris and Marcus laughing at something, looking like the siblings they'd never had the chance to be until now. Daniel and I separated. Vanessa said suddenly. 3 months ago. We're in therapy, trying to work through things, but I don't know if we'll make it. Finding out he'd hidden a child for over 20 years, watching him lie to doctors for 2 years while our son suffered, I can't look at him the same way. Ruth absorbed this information quietly. I'm sorry. She said, and meant it. Are you? Vanessa asked. After everything he did to you? Ruth considered the question. I'm sorry for you and for Marcus. You didn't deserve to have your marriage built on a lie. But Daniel is facing the consequences of his choices, and that's exactly what should happen. Fair enough. Vanessa said. She paused, then added. He's asked if he can meet with Iris. Have a real conversation, start trying to build some kind of relationship. She said she'd think about it. That sounds like Iris. Ruth said. She doesn't make emotional decisions quickly. Do you think she should give him a chance? Ruth watched through the restaurant window as Iris and Marcus talked animatedly, their body language relaxed and comfortable despite having known each other for less than a year. I think Iris will decide what's right for her. She always does. My only advice would be that if Daniel wants a relationship with her, he needs to earn it. Not with money or grand gestures, but with consistent presence. Show up, do the work, prove that he's changed. That's what real fatherhood looks like. He's trying. Vanessa said. He's been in therapy since I moved out, doing the work to understand why he ran all those years ago. But trying and succeeding are different things. Yes. Ruth agreed. They are. 1 year after the donation, Iris sat across from Daniel at a coffee shop. Neutral ground for a conversation she'd been avoiding but that Marcus had gently encouraged her to have. Thank you for agreeing to meet. Daniel said. He looked different than he had a year ago. Smaller somehow, humbled by circumstances and consequences. I'm not promising anything beyond this conversation. Iris said directly. I agreed to meet because Marcus asked me to give you a chance. This is me giving you a chance. I understand. Daniel said. Iris, I've been in therapy for the past year, trying to understand the man I was when I abandoned you. The cowardice, the selfishness, the cruelty. I've had to face some ugly truths about myself. Like what? Like the fact that I built my entire life on avoiding difficult emotions. Daniel said. When your mother got pregnant, I ran because I was terrified of failing as a father. Then I spent 23 years proving myself right by being exactly the failure I was afraid of becoming. That's remarkably self-aware. Iris admitted. My therapist is very good. Daniel said with a sad smile. She's helped me understand that I can't change the past, but I can be honest about it and try to do better going forward. Which is why I wanted to meet with you. Not to ask for forgiveness or to try to be your father now. I know I lost that right 23 years ago. Then what do you want? Daniel was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. I want you to know that I see you. I see the incredible person you are. Strong, compassionate, principled. Everything your mother taught you to be despite my absence. I want you to know that I regret every moment I missed of your life. And I want to ask if there's any possibility, however small, that we might build some kind of relationship going forward. Not father-daughter, but something. Two adults who share DNA and a complicated history, trying to find a way forward. Iris studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation or self-service. But all she saw was genuine remorse and tentative hope. I need you to understand something, she said finally. My mom is my hero. She worked 3 jobs to raise me, sacrificed everything to give me opportunities, taught me what real strength looks like. Anything good in me comes from her, not from you. I know, Daniel said. I've always known that. And I'm not interested in a reconciliation where we pretend the past didn't happen or that everything's forgiven and forgotten. What you did hurt. It shaped my entire childhood. I can't just erase that. I wouldn't want you to. But, Iris continued, Marcus is my brother, and I care about him. And if you're genuinely trying to be a better person, not just for appearance's sake but actually doing the work, then maybe we can build something new. Not a father-daughter relationship. That ship sailed a long time ago. But maybe an honest one between 2 adults trying to make sense of a complicated situation. I'll take that, Daniel said, his voice thick with emotion. I'll take whatever you're willing to give, and I won't ask for more than you're comfortable with. Don't make promises you might not keep, Iris advised. Just show up consistently, be honest, and respect my boundaries. If you can do that, we'll see where things go. Deal, Daniel said. They talked for another hour. Awkward still, but more honest than either of them had expected. When Iris left the coffee shop, she called Ruth. How did it go? Her mother asked. Strange, Iris admitted. He's not the monster I'd built up in my head, but he's not going to be my dad either. We're something new. Adults connected by biology and mistakes, trying to figure out what that means. I'm proud of you, Ruth said. For being open to the possibility while still protecting your heart. I learned from the best, Iris replied. 2 years after the transplant, Marcus threw himself a celebration party, marking nearly 2 years of stable remission and health. The party was small, held in the community garden where he now volunteered, teaching kids about sustainable agriculture and environmental responsibility. Iris brought Ruth, who'd been surprised to receive an invitation but had agreed to come when Iris asked. Marcus greeted them both with huge hugs. He looked nothing like the frail young man in the wheelchair who'd been dying 2 years ago. He was healthy, vibrant, full of life and plans for the future. He'd returned to Berkeley, was thriving in his environmental science program, and had even started playing pickup basketball again. Ruth, he said, taking her hands. I never properly thanked you. Not just for raising Iris to be the kind of person who'd save a stranger's life, but for coming today. I know this isn't easy for you. It's fine, Ruth said, and was surprised to find she meant it. She'd spent so many years carrying anger at Daniel that she'd forgotten it was possible to separate the innocent from the guilty. Marcus was just a young man who'd gotten lucky. Lucky his father had abandoned a daughter who grew up to be compassionate despite every reason not to be. I want you to know something, Marcus said. The relationship between Iris and me, it's taught me more about family than anything in my comfortable childhood did. She didn't know me anything, but she gave me everything. That's real family. Not biology, not obligation, but choice. She's special. Ruth agreed, watching Iris talk animatedly with some of Marcus's friends from Berkeley, her face bright with laughter. She is. Marcus said. And she's that way because of you. Later, as the sun set over the garden and fairy lights twinkled in the trees Marcus had helped plant, Iris found Ruth sitting on a bench, watching the young people celebrate life and second chances. You okay, Mom? Iris asked, sitting beside her. Yeah. Ruth said. I'm good. I was just thinking about how strange life is. 2 years ago, Daniel Moretti was the worst thing that ever happened to me. Now his son is throwing a party to celebrate the fact that my daughter saved his life, and I'm sitting here genuinely happy about it. Life is strange. Iris agreed. Do you regret it? Ruth asked. The donation, the relationship with Marcus, any of it? Not for a second. Iris said firmly. Marcus is my brother, and I love him. The donation gave him his life back. And yeah, it's complicated because of Daniel, but Marcus isn't responsible for his father's mistakes. He's just a good person who deserved a chance. What about Daniel? Ruth asked. How's that going? Iris shrugged. We meet for coffee every few months. Talk about work, books, safe topics. It's not deep, but it's honest. He's trying, and I'm open to seeing where it goes. But he's not my dad. You made sure I never needed one. Ruth felt tears prick her eyes. I just wanted you to have a good life. I have a great life. Iris corrected. I have a mom who showed me what strength looks like, a job I love helping families in crisis, a brother I never expected but who's become important to me, and the knowledge that I made a choice that saved someone's life. That's pretty remarkable. You're pretty remarkable. Ruth said, pulling her daughter close. They sat together as the party continued around them, watching Marcus laugh with friends who'd almost lost him, celebrating the strange and winding path that had brought them all to this moment. Daniel arrived late, keeping to the edges as he'd promised Iris he would. He caught Ruth's eye across the garden and nodded. Not friendly, not hostile, just acknowledgement. Two people who'd hurt each other badly, whose lives had collided and diverged and collided again through their children. Ruth nodded back. She didn't forgive him. Might never forgive him. But she was learning that forgiveness and peace were different things. She had peace. She had a daughter who'd turned out extraordinary despite every obstacle. She had the satisfaction of knowing she'd done the hard work of single motherhood and succeeded. Daniel had his own journey to make, his own consequences to face, his own work to do to earn a place in Iris's life. That wasn't Ruth's responsibility anymore. Mom. Iris said, breaking into her thoughts. Marcus wants us to take a picture. The whole family. Him, me, you, and yes, even Daniel and Vanessa. He says it's important to document the family that chose each other, not just the one we were born into. Ruth hesitated, then saw the hope in her daughter's face. This mattered to Iris, and after 23 years of putting Iris first, Ruth wasn't about to stop now. Okay. She said. Let's take the picture. They gathered together. Ruth and Iris on one side, Marcus in the middle, Daniel and Vanessa on the other. Not touching, not pretending to be something they weren't, but together nonetheless. A family forged not from perfect love or ideal circumstances, but from crisis and choice and the stubborn resilience of young people who refuse to let their parents' mistakes define their relationships. As the camera clicked, Ruth realized something that had been slowly dawning over the past 2 years. The best response to Daniel Moretti's abandonment wasn't her anger or his guilt. It was Iris's success, her compassion, her ability to rise above the circumstances she'd been born into and build something beautiful anyway. Ruth had raised a daughter who saved lives, literally and figuratively. Who chose mercy without sacrificing dignity. who understood that family was complicated, that justice and compassion could coexist, that some situations didn't have clean resolutions but could still lead somewhere good. And that, Ruth thought as she smiled for the camera with her daughter's hand in hers, was enough. 3 years after the donation, Iris stood at the front of a small community center, addressing a room full of single mothers who'd come to hear her speak about navigating parenthood and career. The room was packed, women of all ages and backgrounds united by the shared experience of raising children alone. "My mom raised me alone," Iris said, seeing Ruth in the back row, her eyes already shining with tears. "She worked 3 jobs, went without so I could have what I needed, and somehow still made me feel like the most important person in the world. She taught me that family isn't just about who you're born to. It's about who shows up." The women in the audience nodded, many wiping their own tears. They understood. They knew what it meant to be everything for your child, to sacrifice until there was nothing left but love and determination. After the talk, as mothers lined up to share their own stories and ask for advice, Ruth approached. "That was beautiful, honey," she said. "It was true," Iris replied. "Everything good in my life started with you showing up every single day, even when it was hard." Ruth hugged her daughter, thinking about the scared young woman she'd been at 23 when Iris was born. That girl could never have imagined this moment. Her daughter, successful and compassionate and whole, despite everything. "I'm proud of you," Ruth whispered. "I'm proud of us," Iris corrected. "We did this together." And they had. Through poverty and struggle, through abandonment and heartbreak, through an impossible choice that saved a life and changed everything. They'd done it together. Daniel would never know what he'd missed. The bedtime stories and scraped knees, the school plays and homework help, the quiet moments and loud celebrations that made up a real parent-child relationship. But Iris knew. And Ruth knew. And that was enough. Some stories don't end with forgiveness or reconciliation. Some end with peace. The peace that comes from knowing you did your best with what you had, raised your child with love and values, and trusted them to make their own choices when the time came. This was that kind of story. Not perfect, not neat, but real and hard-won and worth every sacrifice. And in the end, that was the greatest gift Ruth had given Iris. Not just life, but the tools to build a good one. Everything else was just details. If you've ever faced an impossible choice between compassion and self-protection, you understand what Iris went through. If you've ever been a single parent doing the work of 2, you understand Ruth's journey. If you've ever had to choose between holding on to anger or reaching for something new, you understand the complexity of this family's story. The lesson here isn't about forgiveness. It's about something deeper. It's about understanding that helping someone doesn't mean absolving them of their sins. That you can choose compassion for one person while still holding another accountable. That family is built through consistent presence, not just biology. That the consequences of our choices follow us forever, but they don't have to define the next generation. Ruth taught Iris that strength isn't about never struggling. It's about showing up anyway. That love isn't about perfect circumstances. It's about making the best choices you can with what you have. That you can acknowledge hurt while still choosing to help someone innocent who's suffering. Marcus learned that privilege comes with responsibility, that family isn't guaranteed just because you share DNA, and that the greatest gift is when someone chooses you despite having every reason not to. Daniel learned, too late, that running from your responsibilities doesn't make them disappear. They just grow in the darkness until they become impossible to ignore. That you can spend decades building a successful life on a foundation of lies, but eventually, the truth demands to be acknowledged. And Iris, she learned the hardest lesson of all. That sometimes the right choice is also the most complicated one. That you can save someone's life while still protecting your own heart. That mercy and boundaries aren't opposites. They're partners in building a life you can be proud of. If this story resonated with you, if you've been Ruth or Iris or even Daniel, trying to make sense of choices you made or choices made for you, I want you to know something. You are not defined by what was done to you. You are defined by how you respond. By the love you give. by the person you choose to become despite your circumstances. To the single mothers out there doing the impossible every single day, you are seen. You are valued. You are raising the next generation of compassionate, strong humans. Your sacrifice matters. To the children of absent parents, you are not less because someone chose not to stay. You are more because you learned early that showing up is what matters. That consistency is love. That you can build a beautiful life from broken pieces. And to anyone who's made mistakes they wish they could undo, know this. You can't change the past, but you can be honest about it. You can do the work. You can show up consistently going forward. Redemption isn't guaranteed, but growth is always possible. The best families aren't the ones that look perfect in photographs. They're the ones that choose each other, day after day, through the messy, complicated reality of being human. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Like this video if you believe in second chances earned through consistent action, not just words. Subscribe for more stories about real people navigating impossible choices and coming out stronger on the other side. And comment below. Tell me your story. Have you ever had to choose between compassion and self-protection? Have you ever been the one seeking forgiveness or the one deciding whether to grant it? Your story matters. Your experience could help someone else navigating similar waters. Remember, you are stronger than your circumstances. Braver than you know. And worthy of love that shows up, not just promises to. Thank you for listening to Ruth and Iris's story. Thank you for being here. And remember, the most powerful choice you can make is to be the person who shows up. See you in the next story.